On December 8th of 2004, a guitarist best known as Dimebag Darrell was playing with his band Damageplan at a Columbus nightclub. Shortly after starting their first song of the night, a crazed gunman came in and ruined absolutely everything, and Darrell was taken from this world. But legends never die, and this is the full story. Hello, friend, and welcome to High Time Crime. My name's Joel, and on here I specialize in true crime and also cutting grass, but with scissors.
This seems to be the best way to do it.
But anyway, today we're diving into a tragedy that happened in 2004 to a phenomenal guitarist. You're going to learn about him and also the evil that follows. The story or video will be put into a few different parts. First, I'll talk about Dimebag Darrell and who he was and how things transpired. Next, I'll talk about the perpetrator and his early life and possible motives. Finally, I'll talk about a few odd things or conspiracies that are within this case that piqued my interest and most likely will pique yours too. At the end of the video will also be all of the sources that I used, as there is quite the amount, just in case you're wondering about where I got any of the information from. Darrell Lance Abbott was born in Ennis, Texas on August 20th of 1966 to his father Jerry Abbott and his mother Carolyn. Darrell was the second child and son. He had an older brother named Vincent, or Vinny. Now, a little background about Jerry, because his history is important as to where both Darrell and Vinny end up. Jerry began playing piano and guitar at a very early age, and by 18, he joined a band and began touring. Years later, by 1973, he started working at a recording studio, and here he learned all about connections. A few years would go by, and Jerry started writing songs for two country artists named Danny Wood and Freddie Fender, and had even made a few songs of his own, such as I Want a Little Cowboy. That was a pretty good song, and for Jerry, these songs didn't become hits or anything. But in 1979, he helped co-write a song called Play Together Again Again, which ended up peaking at number 11. I checked it out, it was a pretty cool song. The same year, Jerry and Carolyn got divorced though, and eventually Jerry would own his own recording studio called Pantego Sound in Pantego, Texas. Carolyn, during Darrell's early years, had a few different jobs such as cleaning or the assembly line, but she was a very, very good mother, and supposedly Darrell was a lot like her in many ways. Now, going back to Darrell in his early childhood, by the time that he became anywhere from 8 to 10 years old, it's not exactly known, Jerry, his father, gave Darrell a choice to have either a BMX bike or a guitar. Darrell decided to point at the bike. Eventually, though, he heard some of the band Kiss, and this sparked something in him, a striking love for the guitar. Also, around this time, when Darrell was 8 years old, he met what would be his forever companion, Rita Haney. She was also 8 years old, and Darrell was 10 days older than her. They grew up in the same neighborhood, and Rita said that there was a dirt area where they'd ride their bikes, and Darrell said something to Rita one day, and so she pushed him off of his bike. After this, they just really got along. And I know that Darrell had become a part of the Kiss fan club or the Kiss Army, and I think Rita did too. But the first rock concert they attended was for Kiss, and two of Darrell's biggest inspirations later down the line were Ace Frehley of Kiss and Eddie Van Halen of Van Halen. But I'm not sure exactly how good Darrell became at the guitar from the age of 8 to 12. But at the age of 12, most sources say, some say he was 11 or 13, He received a copycat of a Les Paul, an amplifier, and a big muff fuzz pedal. The first song that he learned how to play was Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple, which is basically every child's first song that they learn how to play. And Darrell's dad, Jerry, said that he fell in love with the process and played the song for 3 hours straight. Now, also supposedly, when Darrell was a teenager, he barely could play even bar chords. And then during the summer of 1980, or somewhere around there, somebody had given him Ozzy Osbourne's Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, and Darrell indulged in these records for the entire summer. Apparently, by the end of that summer, Darrell had increased his skill very dramatically. I'm not sure how true all of that is, but I'm sure that something similar probably happened. But it wasn't magic or anything like that. Darrell just loved the guitar and put all he had into it. Also, later down the line in an interview Darrell gave in 1994, he said this: "I respect people that can read tablature and all that but I just don't even have the patience to read the newspaper. I'll read 3 or 4 lines and that's it." In 1981, Darrell won a Dean guitar at a competition, and I'll just let him explain it for you.
I read somewhere about you being banned from every guitar contest.
It's like this, man. Started off about the age of 14, half 15, around there. They had the hottest guitar player in Texas type thing. They had the big commercial with Q102, hottest guitar. But what the deal was, it said record 2 minutes of your hottest playing, take them to this music store in Dallas, and they're gonna listen to it. I mean, it was for all of Texas and stuff. They picked like the top, I believe, 15. Then the big showdown at a popular club in Dallas, which was the Agora Ballroom. Anyway, so get up there and you play for something like 5 minutes a piece. Get up there and wail and shit, and then they pick like the top 3 dudes. First time I got up there and I wailed and I did what I could. I got picked for the top 15, went to the club, had to get my parents to get me in the club and shit because I was underage. I was the youngest dude out of everybody. I didn't think I did that well. I got picked for the top 15 and we got out there, and then I got picked for the top 3. I hammered as hard as I could. Dude, I won first place and I just could not believe it. It was a Dean guitar, like I play, and I just died because I always wanted one of those, and I won that. Next time they had another one, I entered. Of course, I got in, won first place again, Charvel, entered again, won first place, got an ESP guitar, entered again. Next time, this is like 2 months per pop or 3 per pop.
What are you doing that people like? Just shredding?
I did a couple of licks that I'd made up on my own. If I would do like a little bit of a Edward Van Halen solo, maybe a little Eruption, Randy Rhoads or something.
Eventually, did they say you can't enter anymore?
That's what happened. I went to turn in a tape again, and they said, look, man, just be a judge, dude. You already won everything you can win. Give somebody else a shot at it.
But Darrell and his brother were really just getting things started. At this point, and in 1981, Darrell was going by Diamond Darrell, I believe because of a Kiss reference. They had a song titled Black Diamond, but him and his brother Vinny decided to start a band by the name of Pantera. Pantera is Spanish for panther, but that's not the reason as to why they called themselves that. The way that Pantera got their name, though, was that when Vinny was in high school at Bowie High School in Arlington, Texas, he had a classmate named Donnie Sawyer. There's an Italian race car called the De Tommaso Pantera, and Donnie suggested that name to Vinny for his band. At the time, before Pantera was Pantera, they were going by a few other things. They tried out Gemini and Eternity, but after Donnie told Vinny about that name, Vinny looked it up and found out that Pantera was Spanish for panther, and so he either created a logo or got one made and then showed everyone else in the band, and it was sick and everyone loved it, and that's the history there. But Darrell would be the guitarist, and Vinny would be the drummer. Darrell was 16 at the time, and Vinny was 19. For a bit of time, they went through people to find the best fit for their band, and they settled initially on a guy named Rex Brown, who would play the bass, and a guy named Terry Glaze, who would be the lead vocals. He'd play a little bit of guitar, and also the keyboard. Both Rex and Terry were 19 at the time. For Pantera's first 4 projects, Darrell and Vinny's dad Jerry would help and be a pretty big part of the process. The first album was titled Metal Magic, and it was released on June 10th of 1983. Jerry was the producer and engineer. But the next project was titled Projects in the Jungle, and Jerry was the producer and did photography. The third album came in 1985, and it was titled I Am the Night, and Jerry was the producer again. This album was the last album that lead singer Terry Glaze would be a part of, and many people considered it to be glam or speed metal. The other members of the band wanted to go into a heavier metal direction, and Terry wasn't trying to, so their differences split them, and he also wanted to go to college. And it was around this time that Pantera decided that they needed a new lead singer or front man, and this is when a guy named Philip H. Anselmo came in. By February of 1988, their first album together, titled Power Metal, came out, and Jerry would be the engineer again for the last time up until 2010. This album was pretty well received and still is to this day, though some people have certain tastes and preferences. It was written between the years of 1986 and 1988 while the band was looking for a new singer. The album was originally supposed to be released in September of 1987 because Pantera signed a small deal with Gold Mountain Records. This company wouldn't let them release the album because it was too heavy and they wanted them to mellow it down, but Pantera did not want to do that. Now also in 1988, Pantera as a band supposedly, and I say this because there's a lot of contradicting information, but supposedly Pantera became interested in another band called X-Hoarder, though this part of history is once again a bit iffy because I believe they may have denied it or something. Pantera was supposedly still making glam type of music, but they became interested in X-Hoarder's sound, which was considered to be like a groove metal sound that Pantera became known for. I figured I'd just add this part in to kind of give you a better idea of what may have been happening, though this doesn't take any credit away from them at all. Also, this band was touring their butts off, trying their hardest to make a name for themselves. They did several gigs, and eventually, all of that hard work would pay off, though I believe at the time they had a pretty decent following. After touring for a long time and writing new material consistently along with getting better and better, in 1989 the band managed to get signed by Atco Records after being rejected time and time again. But on July 24th of 1990, Pantera released what is considered to be their official debut album, Cowboys from Hell. The year before, in 1989, they had a demo version. And it's kind of funny of the name because their father Jerry made the song I Want a Little Cowboy, but he actually got 2, and From Hell. Just kidding, but this album sounded a bit different from previous ones and a lot more polished. And this one specifically really made a name for Pantera. After this, they would start to tour all over the United States and the entire world. Cowboys from Hell peaked at number 27 on the US Billboard Heat Seekers chart and eventually became certified platinum. 2 years would pass, and on February 25th of 1992, Vulgar Display of Power came out, and it peaked at number 44 on the Billboard 200 and spent 79 weeks on the chart. This was the most out of any album they'd release. It's important to mention that I believe in 1994 is when Darrell was given his nickname. Instead of Diamond Darrell, it would now be Dimebag Darrell. The reason for this is because of the lead singer, Phil. When he first joined the band, he had to move to Texas from New Orleans, and he knew nobody when he first arrived. So he would always call Darrell to ask him if he knew anyone who had any good green. Apparently, one night, Darrell and Philip were getting blasted, and Phil had started to call him Dimebag because Darrell refused to have anything more than a dime bag or $10 of green because he didn't want to be caught with it, and this nickname just stuck. Also, on March 22nd of 1994 is when the 7th album of Pantera came out, titled Far Beyond Driven. This album would end up going #1 on the Billboard 200 and was a very successful album, eventually becoming certified platinum, an absolutely huge accomplishment. For Pantera, things would be good until sometime in 1995 when Phil, the lead singer, began growing distant from the rest of the band because of supposed back pain. There were also a ton of other reasons that I read, but overall Pantera from 1995 to 2001 had a severe falling out, specifically Phil from the 3 other bandmates. Also in 1995, Pantera was actually nominated for their first Grammy, and they would be nominated 3 other times. They didn't win any though. I also want to just say that in 1996, Dimebag Darrell released what was technically his first solo song titled Caged in Rage. The drummer was a guy named Johnny Bix at 6, and it's a pretty cool song. Plus, on May 7th of 1996, the 3rd studio album or 8th album of Pantera came out, titled The Great Southern Trendkill. This album peaked at #4 on the Billboard 200 chart and stayed there for 16 weeks. Another success. In 1999, an album and I think band had been formed that Dimebag Darrell, who I'll now be referring to as Dime because I read that's what he liked to be called by, Vinny, Rex Brown, and David Allan Coe, the country singer in it. It was called Rebel Meets Rebel, and I believe that Rebel Meets Rebel was originally a project that was between Phil, the lead singer of the band, and David Allan Coe, but I think Vinny ended up getting in the way of that and helped change things, though I could be wrong. But what happened is that Dime had waited in line to get an autograph from David Allan Coe, and once he got to meet him, he told him that he was in a band too and gave him a disc of Pantera. Now, keep in mind, at this point, Pantera had performed in front of tens of thousands of people a lot of times. David Allan Coe was surprised that Dime would wait in line to meet him, just like everyone else, and eventually they got together, and the rest is history. The album Rebel Meets Rebel would come out. This same year, 1999, Dime and Vinny's mother, Carolyn, would pass away from lung cancer. They loved her deeply, and I can imagine that this was a devastating loss, but the boys would keep on rocking. The next year, on March 21st of 2000, the final album of Pantera, titled Reinventing the Steel, came out. This also peaked at #4 on the US Billboard 200, and the band was still having massive success. By 2001, though, Phil wasn't returning any calls and told the band members that he needed a break, but apparently started to go on tour with other bands. 2 years later, in November of 2003, Pantera, as everyone knew it, officially broke up. Early that same year, or 2003, Dime and Vinny decided to start a new band, and they would call it Damageplan. They got a guy named Bob Zilla to play the bass, and another guy named Patrick Lockman on the vocals. To break this down further though, Bob was only a touring member of the band, and he did not make any of the music that was created. This band would find success though by the next year in February of 2004, when they released their first and only album titled Newfound Power. It debuted at #38 on the Billboard 200 and sold 44,676 copies in the first week it was released. A brand new band and pulling good numbers, they had a lot of potential and things were looking up in some ways. Now, by either late October or early September, an entire tour was set up called the Shadows Fall / Damageplan tour, and Shadow Falls is another band. Basically, these two bands went on a co-headlining tour across the United States starting on October 27th, and it was set to end on December 9th. The bands would swap the closing spot each night, and it was a pretty big experience for quite a lot of people. For the first few weeks, everything was going perfectly. The tour seemed to be a success. However, Damageplan was playing in a bit cheaper venues than typically before, and the security at these venues wasn't always the greatest. Sometimes they weren't even armed. From what I can tell, Damageplan had a good time on this tour, but this would all come crashing to a terrible end on December 8th of 2004. This particular day, Damageplan had been set to play at the Alrosa Villa, which was a nightclub that was located in Columbus, Ohio. The opening acts on this show were two bands, Volume Dealer and 12 Gauge. I know that they were supposed to still be touring with Shadows Fall until December 9th, but I believe that the tour ended a little bit early, and I don't know who booked Damageplan to play at this show or how this happened, but it did. And what I do know is that there were over 400 people in the crowd that night, and I believe about 15 security guards. Also, a camera was recording everything. That camera was Dime's camera that was set up by Jeff Mayhem Thompson, the head of security for Damageplan. At about 10:15, the band took the stage for the last time with zero idea of what was about to happen. 5 minutes would go by, and at about 10:20 p.m., they were in the middle of their opening song titled Breathing New Life. In that song, there are some pretty haunting lyrics given the circumstance, and they go as follows. Don't you see it coming? When you've caught on, it's too late. When it hits, don't forget who I am. Don't forget this face. At the same time that song was being played, the worst thing imaginable would happen. All of a sudden, a deranged fan jumped onto the stage with a gun and ran towards Dime, ignoring both Bob Zilla and Patrick Lockman. This guy then got right up to Dime and shot him point blank multiple times. The band's manager, a guy named Chris Paluska, actually saw this guy pull out the gun while on stage and saw him running at Dime and tried to prevent it, but was shot in the process. Chris was shot first, though there are some sources that say Dime was. Next, the band's head of security, Jeff Mayhem Thompson, a very large man, ran up to this intruder and tried to stop him, but he too was killed in the process. Vinny saw Dime get shot and tried to intervene, but he was immediately tackled by Dime's guitar tech, a guy named John Graham. John thought that Vinny was a target too, and he pulled him behind the amplifiers, and eventually they both ran in different directions. Vinny outside, John back to the stage. If it wasn't for Jeff Mayhem Thompson intervening initially, Vinny and John both would have most likely gotten found, and who knows what would have happened. But this lunatic wasn't done yet. After this happened, a fan of Damageplan, and specifically Dime's, named Nathan Bray, saw all of this occur, and he jumped on the stage in an attempt to help Dime, but unfortunately it was too late. Nate then tried to help out Jeff Thompson, but he was once again too late. Eventually, the deranged man came back out to the stage and killed Nathan Bray point blank. Afterwards, this man had a problem with his gun, and so people started yelling that he was out of ammo. But in reality, he wasn't. A guy named Aaron Hawk, who was an Alrosa Villa employee, saw a chance to run at this guy, and he took it. But unfortunately, he too was killed in the process. Next, this man took a guy named John Cat Brooks, the band's drum tech, hostage. A police officer by the name of James, who was the first on the scene, came face to face with this armed intruder, and John, who was the hostage. John had been shot a few times in the process, and this guy was threatening to shoot him again. Luckily, Officer James had an opportunity when this man looked in a different direction at another officer, moving his head in a way that the hostage wouldn't be injured. Officer James took a shot with his shotgun, and he killed the man who caused all of this carnage. After just 4 minutes and 59 total seconds, 4 people were dead and 3 others were injured. Of those dead included Dimebag Darrell, Jeffrey Mayhem Thompson, Nathan Bray, and Aaron Hawk. Injured were John Cat Brooks, the drum tech, Travis Burnett, a volume dealer roadie, and Chris Paluska, the band's manager. This day would forever go down in history as the day a legend was lost. So many people were huge fans of Dime and still are to this day. His memory and legacy has not and will not be forgotten. Neither will any of the other men's courageousness to put an end to a deranged madman. Now I know what you are probably wondering, and that is who exactly committed this atrocity and why? What was the reasoning behind this? Well, typically on the other side of the stage, not performing, was a guy, and this guy had a lot of problems. His name was Nathan Gale. Nathan Miles Gale, to be exact, was born on September 11th of 1979 in Chicago, Illinois, to Mary Martino, later Mary Clark, and Gerald Gale. I also read that Mary's maiden name was actually listed as Medors as well, so I don't know whether it was Martino or Medors. A little background about Nathan's parents is that initially their relationship was good, but Mary found out that Gerald was an alcoholic and drank way too much. Mary would be at home alone while Gerald would go out to party and drink. They got married in 1974, and this same year, Mary gave birth to their first child, a boy named Charles. 2 years would pass, and in 1976, Mary gave birth to another child, a boy named Jonathan. Mary and Gerald's relationship would get worse, with Gerald drinking even more, and he started to become emotionally and physically abusive. Mary sadly just sat back and let it all happen because she didn't know what to do. Meanwhile, Gerald began cheating on her and began going out even more. This is when Mary got pregnant in about December of 1978 to January of 1979. Regardless, Mary felt emboldened and that she was better than what she was receiving from Gerald, and so this same year, she decided to divorce him. In August of 1979, the divorce was finalized, and Mary was going to go through a tough time with this new child. And little did she know the horrors and evil that would soon follow. When Nathan Miles Gale was born on September 11th of 1979, he weighed 11 pounds and 11 ounces. Nathan was born with pneumonia, and so the hospital decided to keep him for a bit of time, and eventually he got released completely healthy. A little bit after Nathan was born, Mary got into contact with Gerald just to let him know that he was born, and Gerald said that Nathan was not his, that Mary cheated on him, and that he was not going to claim Nathan as his. He was 100% serious about that. In other words, he didn't care about Nathan at all, and in fact, apparently throughout Nathan's life, Gerald would still pick up and see his 2 other boys pretty frequently, and he pretended that Nathan didn't exist. Mary, however, gave Nathan a lot of attention and love, but the effects of his father leaving him early were definitely detrimental. Also, I don't know why Mary decided to keep Nathan's last name as Gale. It was never specified. But Nathan had been considered to be a pretty normal kid for quite some time. He didn't really have too many issues. Mary tried her hardest to raise her 3 boys as good as she could and to be happy, well young men, and they really appeared to be. In the year 1980, Mary met a man named John Clark, who was a truck driver that typically drove far. John's wife had been killed in a car accident not that long ago, and they previously had 5 children together. So John was a single dad raising 5 kids. Mary and John hit it off very well, and it wouldn't take long before they moved in with each other, and so did their 8 total kids. While John would drive long distances, Mary would be the one to watch all the 8 kids by herself, and at first it was kinda okay, but it got tiring and fast. Now, a few years would go by, and at the age of 3, Mary had noticed that Nathan was squinting a lot, and so she took him to the eye doctor. This doctor said that Nathan's vision was very bad, and that he needed very thick prescription glasses. In the year 1983, Mary and John relocated themselves and their children to Bellefontaine, Ohio. By 1984, Nathan had started attending kindergarten and signs of problems arose. He had a bit of trouble learning, he didn't really care about arts and crafts, and he struggled to get the work done. Now, while that's not crazy and a lot of kids are bad at school, for Nathan it was a bit of an issue. Nathan several times would be tested to see if he had any problems or disabilities or anything, but nothing was ever found. And just to be safe, the school and Mary decided to hold Nathan back a year in kindergarten so he could catch up. This didn't help at all though, and Nathan's grades and his discipline continued to be very lackluster. Nathan outside of school enjoyed video games, TV shows, and playing sports with his brothers. He really wasn't that off. But in the summer of 1991, something a bit different and telling would occur. Mary was at home when she heard the phone ring, and someone on the other line had asked her, "Are you the mother of Nathan Gale?" To which Mary replied, "Yes, I'm his mother. Is something wrong? Is he hurt?" But Nathan wasn't hurt. The person calling was the owner of a store, and this owner had caught Nathan shoplifting. Rather than calling the police, the owner decided to call Nathan's mother. When Mary picked Nathan up, his excuse was that he got peer pressured into doing it by his older brothers. By 1992, Mary and John would get divorced because money got really tight, and issues in their marriage were just not reconcilable. Mary was yet again left alone with her 3 boys, but at this point they were all a bit older. Also, in early 1992, Nathan was in the 6th grade when he decided to steal 7 Hershey bars from a grocery store and was stopped by store security. The owner, rather than calling Mary this time, decided to call the police. The police sergeant then asked Nathan about this, and he told them that he had been stealing candy every day for about a month. Nathan told his officer that he actually cut out a spot in his jacket to steal candy easier. He was ordered to appear in juvenile court on April 6th of 1992 for a charge of petty theft. This day, Nathan pled guilty to the charge and was placed on an indefinite probation, and he had to comply with school rules, he had to go to counseling, he had to comply with all the rules his mom gave him, he had to maintain a C average, and he was told not to commit any more offenses and that he wasn't allowed in the store without his mom, and he was also ordered to pay money to the court. Mary was upset by this and felt so embarrassed, but she hoped that this would help Nathan, and for a bit of time, it really did. His behavior got better, his grades got better, and so did his attitude. But that lasted a very short time, and in February of 1993, Nathan violated probation when he committed domestic violence. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but a warrant was put out for his arrest immediately. Nathan was then taken to a juvenile detention facility in Ohio. Not long after, he was released to his mother and had his probation extended, though I believe it was indefinite at the time. But then, in October of 1993, Nathan, who was now 14 years old, violated probation again somehow and quickly got arrested and returned back to the juvenile detention facility in Ohio. Once again, not long after, Nathan was released back to his mother. Mary, at this point, was very worried about Nathan and could not understand why he was acting out so badly. At 14 years old, Nathan was over 6 foot tall and weighed over 200 pounds. He was a very big kid with a lot of problems. By the end of his 8th grade year, Nathan's parole officer received a call from his school that said he wrote "F you" on a paper that was given to all of his classmates. He said he thought it would be funny, but the others apparently didn't think so, and because of this, Nathan was sent to juvenile detention for 3 days. A weird incident that happened one time is that Nathan's home caught on fire. I don't know the extent of it, and he told the authorities that it was just a cooking accident. Some people tend to believe that it wasn't actually an accident. Also, in 1995, when Nathan was in high school, he stole a $2.50 sticker from a store, and because of his prior convictions and him being on probation, the court deemed it as a Class 4 felony. His court date was set for sometime in June of 1996, but in March of 1996, Nathan was arrested for smoking the good green at his school. Obviously, this violated his probation, and he was sent to juvenile detention again. The court decided to order random testing and told Nathan that he wasn't allowed to contact a specific person. I don't know who, but Nathan, just a few years earlier, at the age of 12, supposedly picked up the habit of smoking cigarettes, and at about 15, he started the green. While he was in juvenile detention, he began to snort Ritalin and actually got caught doing this. By June of 1996, Nathan's court date came, and he pled guilty. The court told him that he would be placed in the state's care for a period of no less than 6 months, and he was sentenced to 30 days of juvenile detention. But the court ended up suspending both of these sentencings as long as Nathan promised to obey what the court told him to do. Now, at some point, it was said that Nathan Gale began to hear voices that would demean him and see faces that would harass him in the middle of the night. They would tell Nathan that he was a homo and made him do things to himself. Also, that they would tell him to kill himself. And still at the age of 15, Nathan became invested in the show Beavis and Butthead. And he told his mother that the show was basically his life and that he thought the creator of the show had been spying on him and stealing his life for the show. Not only this, but at one of the court hearings, apparently he even told the judge basically the same thing. This judge told Nathan that if he keeps up with this nonsense, he's going to be put away for a long time. Nathan, after this, never mentioned Beavis and Butthead again. Secretly, though, he was getting worse and worse as time went on, and so were his addictions and the type of drugs he was doing. At the age of 16, Nathan was introduced to Pantera by a friend of his, and specifically their second album, Vulgar Display of Power. Nathan immediately fell in love with the band and their lyrics, and it became an unhealthy obsession, apparently. One time in high school, Mary was called to go pick up Nathan because he was acting strange. He was blasted out of his mind on something, and when Mary entered the room, he didn't even notice it. Nathan then told his mom and the school official that he told classmates that Pantera had just visited him at school. Mary decided to drive him home, and on that ride home, he told her that Dimebag, Phil, Vinny, and Rex all came to the school to see him. Mary told him that he was crazy and needed to knock it off, and Nathan didn't say anything in return. Also, at some point in time, I believe around here, Nathan began to think and told his mother and a few friends of his that Pantera stole lyrics from him and used them in their songs. Nathan was supposedly very angry that he wasn't being given credit for the songs or money or anything, even though he obviously didn't write them. His delusions were becoming intense and turning to pure hatred. At this point, he had been using the green, coke, mushrooms, and also LSD. All of this while maybe having an undiagnosed form of mental illness. Nathan was going in a downward spiral fast, and when he was 17 years old, his mother moved him and herself to Marysville, Ohio from Bellefontaine. This didn't help anything, and not long after, Nathan got arrested with 2 other guys for breaking into a Kmart. He claimed they were just skateboarding, but a witness claimed otherwise. Nathan's punishment for this was suspended, and nothing came from it. At this time, He spent a lot of time playing video games and just sitting around complaining that life sucked. Mary said that he didn't care for finding a job and had really bad sleep problems. She said that near the Christmas of 1997, Nathan was 18 years old, and at about 2 a.m., she heard a noise in the living room, and so she went to see what it was. Mary said that she looked into the living room and saw Nathan on the couch crying with his arms around his legs, with his legs up. Nathan appeared super upset and irritated, so Mary asked him what was wrong, and he told her, "Be quiet, Mom. They're out there. They're watching me." Mary asked him, "Who's out there?" To which Nathan told her, "They are. They're after me, and they're taping me." Mary was super scared about this and super confused, so she went to look out the window, and Nathan pulled her back and said, "Mom, they'll see you. You have to stay away." Over the course of the next hour and a half or so, Mary coddled Nathan to calm him down, and at this point, she was really convinced that he was doing drugs. A few months later, Mary confronted Nathan about what he's been doing and how he's been acting, and he lashed out at her like never before. He threw her up against a wall and actually put a hole in it, and Mary, for the first time ever, was very afraid of Nathan and realized that if he wanted to, he could kill her. Nathan eventually released his mother, backed up, and realized what he did. Mary then called the police because she made a promise to herself to never allow a man to touch her like that again. And when the police came, they took Nathan away, but he wasn't arrested. I think Mary didn't want him to be, but she told him that he was not allowed at her home anymore. Nathan was now kicked out. For about the next year and a half, Nathan didn't really have a home and lived on the streets. It was said that he didn't have any friends or family to turn to, and he was arrested multiple times for sleeping in places he wasn't allowed to. Not only this, but he also got arrested for trying to steal someone's car while they were pumping gas. Nathan would try to get into contact with his mom and other people, but he was doing bad in the streets and doing drugs. And some people say that he was talking to invisible people and walking invisible dogs around. I'm not too sure. But in the year 2000, Nathan called his mother Mary and told her he wanted to fix his life and join the military to get back on track. And he asked her for help and to move back in. Mary told him yes, but on the conditions that he listens to her and her rules, and that she won't tolerate any drug use or physical violence. That if he violates anything, she's calling the police and instantly evicting him. Nathan agreed to this and promised her he was becoming a new man. After moving back in, Mary said that she noticed that Nathan would pace back and forth and that it really annoyed her. So she got him to take drug counseling sessions, but he stopped going after just a few of them. Also, around this time, it appears as if Nathan began to dress in all black, wear chains and nail polish and stuff, though there is zero evidence for that. Nathan still wasn't okay in the mind though, and told Mary that he heard voices and thought he was being watched, that Pantera was stealing his lyrics and thoughts, just delusional things. After about a year of moving back in, Nathan seemed to be getting better. He wasn't having any run-ins with the police besides minor traffic violations, and he also began attending a trade school to learn about mechanics. Nathan wasn't really talking about voices or delusions anymore, and so things really looked up. When Nathan turned 22, that morning just so happened to be the morning of 9/11. And this day obviously had a huge impact on not only Nathan, but the entire country and a large part of the world. It was said that Nathan began to believe that he knew exactly who was responsible for this attack. It was Marilyn Manson. He basically said that Marilyn Manson brainwashed these operatives. A bunch of people who knew Nathan said that he wanted to kill Marilyn Manson because of this. Interesting, but for quite some time, Nathan followed the situation closely to see what would come of it, and decided that he needed to take action himself and join the military. So Nathan went to his mother and told her about this, and she was very concerned by this. But she believed that this could be a huge stepping stone and a way to help Nathan, so she liked the idea and supported it. Eventually, Nathan applied to the Marines in December of 2001 and January of 2002. And he lied on the application when it asked about prior drug use and arrests. He would have been denied had he not lied, but he answered no, and so it appeared as if Nathan had a clean background. Now, the Marines really did kind of shape Nathan into what appeared to be a well-groomed and decent young man, but that was a facade, obviously. Nathan in the Marines wrote letters back and forth to his mother all about his experience. Nathan blew most of his money he made on strippers, alcohol and cigarettes, video games, and a bunch of other stuff while in the Marines. Nathan called his mother, Mary, in November of 2002 and told her that he's taking a bunch of weeks leave around Christmas and will be up there to see her. Mary was ecstatic about this because Nathan seemed to be doing well and he was on a good path. And because it was around Christmas, Mary told Nathan that she'll get him a present, and Nathan decided he wanted a handgun because he joined the Marines and got comfortable with guns. Mary decided to go to a local gun store and buy the gun that Nathan wanted, a Beretta M9 9mm pistol, which at the time was the official sidearm of the United States. She couldn't take it home though, Nathan would have to pick it up. So in December of 2002, when Nathan returned home, he was in phenomenal shape, the best he's ever been, and Mary said that he was super mature, unlike ever before. Mary decided to tell him about his present, and Nathan was super happy. And on December 9th of that year, he drove to the gun store and picked it up. Nathan had to take a background check, and he lied on the form when it asked him if he was ever convicted of a felony and if he had ever used any drugs. Now, typically, the gun store would receive a call from the company that performs the background checks almost immediately after putting the background check into the system, and that day, the store received the call. But the caller told the owner of the store to delay the sale of the handgun to Nathan, and it wasn't specified why. Eventually, the company called the store owner again and told him it was okay to proceed with the sale. Nathan bought an extra 100 rounds so he could break the gun in. Nathan decided he would bring the gun back with him when he returned to his station after Christmas and keep it in the barracks. But a few of the other Marines ratted him out, and this gun got confiscated and sent back home to Mary. Mary said when she received it, she put it in her closet and forgot all about it. From January of 2003 to March of 2003, Nathan was working at Camp Lejeune at a pool, and in February of that year, his regiment was told they'd be deploying to Iraq for combat operations. Nathan began telling other Marines that he was having problems with sleeping, and he was hearing voices and seeing things that weren't really there. Not only this, but he was becoming very off and forgetting everything, and gaining a lot of weight. Nathan got written up for these issues multiple times, and he also missed a bunch of appointments. About a week before his regiment was set to deploy, higher-ups decided to take Nathan out so he wouldn't be deployed, and then he was sent to a Marine psychiatrist for a mental health evaluation. The psychiatrist said that Nathan had severe mental issues, and he admitted him to the mental health ward at Camp Lejeune. It was said that Nathan was hospitalized from March 3rd to March 10th of 2003, and they initially stated that he was suffering from a psychotic disorder. The doctors performed a bunch of tests, and Nathan said a lot of troubling things when asked about what was occurring. He said that he had been hearing voices since the 2nd grade, and that these voices told him he was a beast. Nathan said he saw things that weren't really there, and that he'd see demonic faces, and this would make him very angry that he'd break things to stop them. That these voices would say very rude things to him, and he also told the doctors about Marilyn Manson and how Pantera was formed because of him, and that he wanted to find a lawyer, but no one would take the case. Nathan told the doctors about how he lied on the forums about his prior use and basically everything. To make a pretty long story short, Nathan had a lot of problems. These psychiatrists apparently prescribed him Zyprexa, an antipsychotic, and Prozac for depression, a very typical thing found in a lot of these cases. By July 1st of 2003, Nathan was deemed no longer fit for service for the Marines, and supposedly the doctors at this point believed he was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia for a long time. Now on October 8th of 2003, a full review was done for Nathan, and it was deemed that he was ineligible for veterans benefits and that he was going to be honorably discharged on November 30th of 2003. That day came, and Nathan was discharged after a little less than 2 years in the Marines. Now there is some discrepancies here that other people have found with Nathan's discharge that appears to basically state that Nathan was never discharged because of paranoid schizophrenia, but it was actually some sort of physical disability. This is because of the papers that got released citing Nathan's discharge and somewhat reasoning, but it's very vague. Also, supposedly, the information about him dealing with paranoid schizophrenia is backed entirely by Nathan's mother and the detective on the case, who said he read all of the papers from the military. Also, the papers that were released never mentioned anything about the specific illness, though it did mention that Nathan gained too much weight and wasn't the required weight anymore, and a few other things. So what to believe here, I really don't know. Also, I'm going to get very into this at the end of the video even further about some bizarre things, so stay tuned. By December of 2003, Nathan had moved back to Marysville, Ohio, and got an apartment located next to his mother. Mary had no idea that Nathan was discharged from the military because Nathan never told her about anything that was happening, not about the voices, the faces, the medicine, anything. After telling Mary about being discharged, he told her that he sometimes had outbursts and basically that he may have had paranoid schizophrenia. For Mary, she began to look all into it, and everything made a lot of sense, especially because of Nathan's problematic childhood. Nathan told Mary that things were okay though because he was taking medicine to help the problems. Now Nathan in the year of 2004 got a job working at a Minute Lube as a mechanic, and the owner said he was a good employee who worked hard and showed up on time. He also got another job, I believe, cutting trees or doing something along those lines. Nathan had a pretty consistent routine of eating at a place called Maggie's every week. It was said that around this time he was staying to himself and working out or playing video games and just walking around town, talking to invisible people and animals. Nathan started to go to a tattoo shop that was across the street from his house pretty oftenly, getting a few tattoos himself. I'll mention those later. And the people who worked there and the patrons said that Nathan was creepy and odd. Nathan had a car, but his mom helped him buy another one, I don't know why, and things seemed to be okay. But in reality, they weren't. Nathan secretly stopped taking his antipsychotic medicine, and soon visions and voices began to return and take him over. He began to really think about Pantera and what they did, specifically Dime and Vinny. He had a hatred for them that was deep because in his mind, he believed they stole from him. On April 4th of 2004, Nathan had driven to Cincinnati, Ohio to go to a concert that was held by Damageplan. Nathan had a plan to confront both Dime and Vinny about his delusions. Nathan at the concert basically ran onto the stage and ran up to Dime, screaming about him stealing, and security saw this and then tried stopping Nathan. Nathan grabbed onto anything he could so they wouldn't take him away, and he pulled down a lighting rack and it broke. This turned into a big fist fight while Damageplan kept playing, and not long after, Nathan was taken off of the stage. After that, security took Nathan outside and they beat him up and then called 911. Pat Lockman made a joke on stage saying that Nathan was the 5th member of their band. Basically, everyone declined to press charges, and on May 3rd of 2004, this case was closed. But for Nathan, this did something to him. He wanted his revenge. Now, for the next several months, some more things would happen. First off, in April of 2004, Nathan decided to try out for an offensive lineman position on the Lima Thunder. I think that's how you pronounce it. He made the team as a backup player, and so in June, he quit his job at the Minute Lube and put more time into playing football. On Wednesday, Nathan would attend practice, and Saturdays, he would attend the games. Nathan wore number 65, and he went from being a backup player to starting in a bunch of games, both offensively and defensively. The coach said Nathan was a good player who was shy and kept to himself. He wasn't spectacular, though. Nathan didn't have a lot of money because he quit his job and didn't make any money from football, so he'd ask his mother to spot him quite frequently. Typically, he'd ask her for money for ammunition so he could go to the gun range and practice shooting his Beretta, something he really liked doing. But this wasn't just something that Nathan was doing. Some people believe he was practicing for a certain day that he had planned in his mind. Nathan had came up with a plan to get his evil vengeance, and he wasn't going to stop until he did. Nathan Miles Gale woke up on December 8th of 2004 with one thing on his mind: murder. He knew that this day Damageplan would be performing at the Alrosa Villa. How he knew this and when he learned of it isn't known. It would have been somewhere between September and December. But Nathan didn't buy a ticket or anything. He already figured out what he was going to do. Nathan went to Maggie's to get some lunch, like he normally would, and then he walked around town for a while. He returned to his home and got ready for what was to come. Nathan began cleaning his gun and got extra magazines and ammo ready. At around 6:30 p.m., he went across the street to the tattoo parlor he had frequently visited. Now, before this, Nathan was seen as weird and creepy, but overall very quiet and never really said a lot. This day, Nathan went into the shop, grabbed a magazine, sat down, and then he looked at it. Then he asked a tattoo artist if he could buy a tattoo machine he saw in the magazine, and the tattoo artist was doing a tattoo and didn't feel like talking to him. He told Nathan that he'd have to be a certified artist to buy a machine, and Nathan just said, "Oh," and walked back to his seat. All of a sudden, though, Nathan threw the magazine down on the table and said to the tattoo artist, "Hey man, that's bullshit. This magazine sells tattoo equipment to anyone. You are a liar." And Nathan then ran out of the building, and this left everyone inside a bit confused and kind of scared. Supposedly, someone a few days before at this shop said that Nathan had reminded them of a Columbine shooter, and I guess they were right. Nathan then went home with even more rage in his mind and was set on what he was about to do. But Nathan put his loaded Beretta into his waistband, and in his pocket he had another loaded magazine plus 30 more rounds of ammo. He was wearing a gray hoodie, a Columbus Blue Jackets hockey jersey, a belt with a Harley-Davidson buckle, blue jeans, black shoes, an Under Armour hat, and he also carried with him a knife and a baseball bat. I don't know where he put that at or where it ended up, but he also had on glasses, a chain wallet in his pocket, and a green lighter in his pocket. Remember this, as this is important for later. Nathan grabbed his CD player and put his headphones in, listening to Damageplan's new album while he was on the way. He arrived to the area at about 9:15 p.m. Some reports state that he arrived earlier, I'll mention that later, and eventually he parked and wandered around the place, constantly going to the smoking area. Nathan was looking for a way that he was going to get in, and eventually he'd find it. At about 9:45 p.m., the parking lot attendant named Mitch had seen Nathan pacing back and forth and smoking cigarettes and asked him if he had his ticket, and Nathan told him that he does have his ticket but isn't really interested in the opening bands, that he was waiting for the big show, Damageplan. I guess that Mitch never checked to see if Nathan really had a ticket, But several minutes would pass, and sometime between 10:10 and 10:15ish, Nathan decided that it was time. He saw a 6-foot tall fence that he'd climb over and went and did that. I read that people supposedly helped him and cheered him on when they saw him struggling to get over. But after Nathan dropped down, or people helped him down or whatever, the parking lot attendant Mitch saw this and ran to the venue to notify security that a man climbed the fence without a ticket. Mitch then also supposedly ran up to Nathan and told him, "Hey, no, you don't, man." And Nathan replied by saying, "Hey, what's up?" and just kept walking. The parking lot attendant Mitch was following Nathan, yelling at him to stop, but Nathan ignored him and kept on his path. And this is when supposedly a bunch of other security guards, as there was about 14 other ones there, started to follow Nathan. But Nathan made his way to where the crowd was and hopped in, and the security lost him or something. Nathan basically got onto the stage from the VIP section, ignoring everyone, and when he got on stage, he began running right at Dime. As he was running, he pulled out the Beretta from his waistband, and I believe that this is when Chris Paluska saw Nathan and tried to stop him, but he got shot in the process and was helped off of the stage by people. Nathan then ran up to Dime and grabbed him by the hair, pulling his head towards him. At the same time as Nathan was running up to Dime, Jeff Mayhem Thompson ran right at Nathan to try and stop him. When Nathan grabbed Dime's hair, Mayhem grabbed Nathan's shoulders to try and pull him off of Dime. Dime put his hand out to try and move the gun that Nathan was pointing at him out of the way, and this is when Nathan shot the gun, and it went through Dime's hand and also hit him in the head. Mayhem immediately grabbed Nathan and threw him to the ground. And keep in mind that Nathan was at this point 25 years old, 6'3", and 265 pounds. But Mayhem was bigger. He was 6'8" and 350 pounds, and he tackled Nathan and punched him in the face, and that made Nathan's glasses fall off. Nathan, as we mentioned earlier, had terrible vision, and this blinded him a bit. But at the same time as this, Nathan was pretty close to Dime and pulled him close to him again and shot him in the face again. I believe with Mayhem still pulling him from his back. Nathan then shot Dime one last time in the back of the head, killing him. Dime would die either on top of or right next to his guitar. After this, Mayhem threw Nathan to the ground, again trying to stop him from attacking Dime and trying to take the gun away, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough. This is when the band manager Chris Paluska, the drum tech John Cat Brooks, and an Alrosa security officer named Ronald Jenkins hopped onto the stage and ran at Nathan to help Mayhem. Now, supposedly Chris was already shot at this point, so I'm unsure about the full sequence of what happened here. Apparently Chris had tried to grab Nathan and then got shot in the chest, but I believe that's what happened first. This is when the unarmed security guard named Ronald Jenkins saw Chris get shot, and he decided to hop off the stage and run away. Nathan got up at this point and tried to push Mayhem out of the way to try and find Vinny. At this same time, John Cat Brooks, the drum tech, went up to Dime and realized that he was dead. Vinny saw everything happen, including Dime getting shot, and he wanted to try and intervene, and so he jumped off of his drum set. This is when Dime's guitar tech, John Graham, jumped onto Vinny and pushed him to the floor to shield him. John was worried that Vinny was the next target, and he was right. And he held Vinny down, telling him to be quiet. Within a few moments, they saw Nathan turn away, and John told Vinny to get out of there. Meanwhile, he went back onto the stage. Back on the stage, Mayhem prevented Nathan from finding Vinny and John when he grabbed him from behind and started to choke him out. Nathan still had his gun in his hand, and in an attempt of desperation, he pointed it over his shoulder and without looking, fired, and this shot went through Mayhem's chest. Immediately, he let loose of Nathan and he grabbed his chest because he just got shot, and he tripped a little bit, and this is when he ended up looking away from Nathan. Nathan then shot Mayhem from behind him, killing him. The drum tech, John Cat Brooks, saw Mayhem die and screamed, "No!" And basically he got incredibly angry because of Dime and Mayhem, and he ran right at Nathan, and a fight ensued with John trying to grab Nathan's gun. Meanwhile, the crowd was in complete shambles, not knowing at all what to do. A lot of people were freaking out, but there was also a lot of calmness as well. Pat Lockman, the front man, was screaming for someone to call 911. After that, Pat jumped off of the stage and went to help the tour manager, Chris Beluska. Meanwhile, John and Nathan were still in a battle and made their way behind the amplifiers. Nathan grabbed John by the hair and they fell on top of a bunch of beer and stuff. Nathan then put the gun to John's head and told him to stop fighting and shut up or he'd blow his brains out. The crowd began throwing stuff at Nathan and doing what they could to stop him. John wasn't going to listen to Nathan and kept trying to disarm him, and eventually Nathan overpowered him. John put his hand over the gun again, and Nathan shot him in the hand, and it went straight through, all the way to his leg. Nathan then hid behind the amplifiers for a moment and reappeared holding the gun to John's head. He was also putting it to his own head periodically as well. John, who had been shot at this point, was thinking this was the end for him, and so he kept calm and asked Nathan why he was doing this and begged him to stop. Nathan told him to shut the fuck up and quit being a little bitch. In the crowd, there was a guy named Nate Bray, and he was a huge fan of Pantera and Damageplan, but specifically Dime. I read that Dime was like a hero to him. So Nate jumped onto the stage after seeing all of this take place, as he was either in the front row or very close. He first went up to Dime and tried to give him CPR, but quickly realized that he was dead. Next, he went up to Mayhem, who was only just a few feet away, and at this point there were others trying to help Nate. Nathan was hiding behind the amplifiers, still holding John hostage, when he came out from behind the amps with John. Nate then yelled at Nathan, "Man, what are you doing?" and walked towards him. Nathan, in response, shot Nate in the chest. This round also hit Mayhem as well. Nate was still alive and fell into the dressing room and was able to use his legs to get the door shut. He would stay alive but end up dying from his wounds at the hospital at 11:10 p.m. After shooting Nate, Nathan's gun malfunctioned, and a bunch of people saw this happen and yelled that he was out of ammo. That wasn't true though, his gun just did something called stovepiping and didn't work for a second. But Nathan had a lot of firearm experience and fixed it almost immediately after clearing the gun and dropping the slide. There was a member of the security team named Aaron Hawk, and Aaron was trying to be cautious and wait for an opportunity to stop Nathan because he knew the carnage that Nathan could cause. John, who Nathan was holding hostage, all of a sudden tried to break free from Nathan, and this is when he grabbed the gun and tried to take it out of Nathan's hands. John ended up pressing the magazine release button, and the magazine fell onto the ground. Nathan then pulled the gun away from John and shot him with a round that was in the chamber, and this hit John in his side. When Nathan shot this round, the slide locked because there was only one round, and this is when people began yelling that Nathan was out of ammo. That wasn't true though, but Aaron Hawk didn't know this and still ran at Nathan. Nathan pulled out another magazine from his pocket and shot Aaron twice. Aaron fell backwards, and then Nathan went over top of him and shot him 3 more times, killing him. Nathan then took John Cat Brooks, the drum tech, hostage once again, and he tried to go into the dressing room and saw Nate in there dying, and also no exit. Nathan realized that this was probably the end for him, and he kept putting his gun from his head to John's head. Eventually, a Columbus cop of 5 years named James arrived on scene. He immediately ran to the problem, and people were yelling at him in the parking lot that this madman is still inside and shooting at people. James had no idea what was going on, but he went to the danger without question. When he got inside, some guy brought him to where he needed to go, and James kinda hid and looked at the situation to try and understand what he could do. People were yelling at James to shoot Nathan. James was about 20 feet away from Nathan with a shotgun, and at this point, they were face to face. Nathan was holding the gun to John's head and was about to pull the trigger when another officer came in from his side. Nathan looked at that officer, and then this is when Officer James had a very small second to make a choice, and he took that choice. Officer James fired a shotgun from about 20 feet away, and he hit Nathan in the head, killing him instantly. Any further over, this shot would have also hit John, but it didn't. Once John felt Nathan's grip let up, he ran out of there, severely injured. After 4 minutes and 59 seconds, Nathan's terror was finally over. 3 people were injured and 4 people were dead, including Dimebag Darrell. Now, this is an absolutely tragic case of a man that was supposedly dealing with an undiagnosed case of paranoid schizophrenia for what was his entire life. I say supposedly because of what I'll talk about here shortly. Nathan Miles Gale had many delusions about things, especially Pantera, mainly Dime and Vinny. He had thought they stole his lyrics, thought that they were formed because of him, and believed that they owed him a lot of money. Now, when all of this happened, it was believed that Nathan Gale was upset that Pantera broke up, and this was the reason that he did all of this. That could have been a factor too, but Nathan also believed they stole lyrics from him long before this. His mother said, and his friends said, and so did a few other people. So I'm not sure what it really was. Nathan was a twisted man who had many delusions and unfortunately did not get the help that he needed until long after it was too late. There's no excuse for him doing what he did. But after doing research into paranoid schizophrenia and covering a few cases about it, it's very upsetting what those people have to go through. Why Nathan would have stopped taking his medicine is unknown, but clearly that had a very negative effect. In a lot of these cases, people are taking their medicine for a period of time and then stop and commit these horrible acts. I don't know what exactly is up with all of that. And also, if Nathan's mother Mary knew that he had paranoid schizophrenia, why would she allow him to be around a gun? None of it makes any sense. And for me, I wasn't exactly the biggest fan of Pantera, though I have listened and liked their stuff in the past. But after doing this case and doing research for days, I have a pretty newfound appreciation. I went back and listened to Metal Magic twice and Far Beyond Driven twice as well, and I'm going to listen to the other albums as well to get an idea of their sound, but I really did enjoy both of those albums. My current favorite songs are 5 Minutes Alone and I'm Broken, though there are a bunch of other really good songs I'm interested in, and to be honest, Dime was a phenomenal guitarist. I also play the guitar, and I'm nowhere near as good, but I wasn't that aware of how good he truly was. Some of his riffs are just crazy, and his brother Vinny was a phenomenal drummer as well. They both knew tempo great and stayed on beat. It's very, very upsetting to lose such a captivating figure such as Dimebag Darrell, and he didn't deserve what happened to him at all. He was a loved and cherished person who dedicated his whole life to his passion, and he died doing what he loved. Dime was 38 years old at this time, and it's a bit ironic because he was killed 24 years to the day after John Lennon. Is this a coincidence, or did Nathan do it on purpose? We don't know, but Dime will never be forgotten, and neither will his brother Vinnie Paul Abbott, who passed away in 2018 at 54 years old. Vinnie died because of natural causes, including heart disease, and then Dime and Vinnie's father, Jerry Paul Abbott, passed away on April 2nd of 2024 at 81 years old. That would be this year if you're watching when this is released. And that's very upsetting because this means that everyone in Dime's family passed away. Him, Vinny, his mother in 1999, and his father. Jeff Allen Thompson was 40 years old and his nickname was Mayhem. He told the band just a few weeks before and a few other times that he would take a bullet for them, and he did. He protected Vinny and sadly wasn't able to protect Dime, but died trying in the process, and that is a very courageous and heroic man in my eyes. Jeff or Mayhem was looked at as a very kind and awesome person, and I agree. Nathan Anthony Nate Bray was 23 years old and also a heroic person in this process. He risked his life to jump on stage and try to help Dime and Mayhem, but was sadly killed after yelling and going towards Nathan, which, think what you want of it, at the time he was filled with emotions after seeing one of his heroes be killed. It's really hard to blame him. Nate loved basketball and all sports. He had a ton of sports cards. He loved Pantera and Dime specifically. He had a bunch of his guitar picks because Dime would throw them in the crowd, and Nate went to a lot of shows. Nate left behind a wife and a son, and so much more. Lance Corporal Aaron Alexander Hawk was the last person killed by Nathan after he tried to rush him when people said Nathan ran out of ammo. Once again, an act of bravery and courageousness because Aaron wanted to stop the carnage and try to ensure that Nathan doesn't kill anyone else. Aaron served in the Marine Corps and was a roadie and an employee at the Alrosa Villa nightclub when this happened. Aaron was considered to be the type of person to always go out of his way to help people, and he was that way to the very end. Everyone that was murdered in this tragic incident deserves to be remembered, and they are. Those three men I just mentioned for their bravery and efforts to stop the threat, and Dime for being a legendary guitarist who never stopped rocking out. What happened is genuinely an absolute tragedy. But Pantera and Damageplan's music, along with Dime and Vinny, will live forever. Now, I'm going to talk about some weird things that were uncovered after this entire thing went down. I found a blog called the Bat Cave ran by a guy named Joe Gilmore. Joe had done an FOIA request and had gotten the entire 600-plus page police report and did some very extensive research into it. The reason for this is because Joe had thought a lot of the things seemed wrong about the case and that a lot of the things just didn't add up. So let's talk about it. Well, for starters, Nathan's military discharge. His mother and a detective that were on the case both said that they had obtained papers from the United States Marines saying that Nathan had paranoid schizophrenia and other problems. Well, in the police report were documents from the Marines, and one of those papers is the Certificate of Release of Discharge from Active Duty. This was for Nathan, and on this paper, it shows something called SPN numbers, or Separation Program Numbers. And they basically just state the reason why someone was discharged or separated. According to both the Balance.com and Touchstone Research Group, the code in box 26 states JFP1, and a JFP was a misconduct with an unknown reason or a disability not in the line of duty. The code next to that one on box 27 was for re-entry into the military, or basically what Nathan would have to do to re-enter. The code on here was RE-3P, which according to jointhemilitary.org means personnel separated with disqualifications. Eligibility, not eligible unless a waiver is granted. And according to Touchstone Research Group, it means physical disability, obesity, or motion sickness. Now we'll look at 3 of the administrative remarks that Nathan was given by the Marines. Here's the first one. With this one, the date is for February 15th of 2003, and up top it says March 3rd of 2003. This is the date that Chris Arnold wrote in his book that I used in some portions of this video. This date was supposedly the date that Nathan was submitted to the mental health ward at Camp Lejeune. The document says nothing about any form of mental illness. Now, the second administrative remark Nathan was given was about 2 months after the first one on April 15th of 2003. In this write-up, it states nothing about how Nathan had a mental illness and states that he gained too much weight and that he lacks self-discipline. In this last administrative remark, it's pretty telling. This states basically that Nathan was given a re-enlistment code because of a physical disability. It says it right there. This also aligns with what was stated a little bit ago. Also, in Chris's book, he stated that the military found out about Nathan's illness about a month before. Another very weird thing is that Nathan left behind pretty much zero signs of being a Pantera fan. In his entire apartment, there was not a single thing relating to Pantera. No CDs, no magazines, no CD covers, no apparel, nothing. If Nathan was so obsessed with Pantera, Joe asks, where is everything to back that up? And going into Nathan's apartment, once again, even more weird things arise. Nathan's autopsy report says that when he was shot and killed, he was wearing white socks, white boxers, black shorts, a pair of blue jeans and a black belt, a white t-shirt, a gray sweatshirt, and a blue jacket jersey. On his body, he had a knife, his wallet with his IDs, his watch, ammunition, his gun, an extra magazine, and also silver hoop earrings. I don't know where the baseball bat went. Normally, it would state that Nathan would have had glasses, and he was also wearing a hat, but those were actually ripped off by supposedly Mayhem, so they weren't included on the autopsy list because they weren't on his body. Now, let's look at this photo of Nathan's living room. Why is his watch, the green lighter, his cigarettes, and his wallet with some change there if he had them on his body when he died? I mean, yeah, it's obviously possible to have sets of everything, but that would be kind of weird. Inside of Nathan's living room was also awards he received from the Marines, his School of Infantry, and Logistics Operations School diplomas. Not only this, but Nathan had gotten 3 tattoos in the year since he was discharged from the military. This was a United States Marine Corps tattoo, a barbed wire tattoo, and an unfinished Grim Reaper tattoo. Nathan seemed to be huge into the Marines, and that kind of seemed to be his life. In his bedroom, there was a CD player and radio, oil, and a Q-tip that was believed to have been used to clean his gun. Though once again, with this CD player, there are 0 CDs around. Also in Nathan's bedroom was a calendar for the year 2005. Throughout Nathan's house, it kind of looked like he had just got done cleaning as the burners were off the stove. Things were in weird places, but it just seemed like he was cleaning. Other writings throughout the house were phone numbers and company names because it looks as if Nathan had been trying to get a new job. This note was found inside of Nathan's gun case though, and it seemed to investigators like song lyrics or something. You'll see me come alive, and I'll take your life and make you mine. This is my life, I'm gone. I don't know what that says there. That was the only writing of Nathan's that I could find. Also, another weird thing was that Nathan, on the way to the club, was listening to a CD player with Damageplan's new album. The one thing that Joe mentions is off is that this CD was brand new, and there was no jewel case for it anywhere. Not in Nathan's house, not the car. It's possible he could have thrown it away, but that would be kind of weird. Let's look at some more things. Nathan had just gotten a driver's license issued to him 3 months before the shooting. He had just gotten a new used car with the help of his mother a month before, a red Grand Am. Nathan, for most of the year, 2004, was driving a Cadillac, but that changed. He had 2 jobs, one working a tree company, and I think the other was a mechanic, and he had been playing football for Lima Thunder. Nathan really seemed motivated for the football team, as notes were also found that he wrote for them, and really nothing makes any sense. Joe brought up some more good points about Nathan's birth certificate and how it didn't have either his father or mother's name on it, though maybe someone in the comments could elaborate about why that would be. Joe also stated that it was weird that Nathan's mother, Mary, let Nathan take his father's last name, even though he wasn't in the picture. Plus, how after all of this happened, neither Nathan's father or his 2 brothers were ever mentioned or interviewed for not only the police report, but literally anything. I also personally try to do a bit of digging to find out who they are, and I can't find a single thing about them. Normally I'm good at researching online, but it's literally as if Nathan's brothers and his father didn't exist. They're not connected to Nathan via any of the people search websites. Normally, they'll give you an option to see possible relatives, but for Nathan, they don't exist. And the same thing goes with Mary, Nathan's mother. Now, obviously, it's possible the websites don't have them on there, but it typically has most people. And it even has Nathan and his old addresses and phone numbers and such. So why wouldn't it have his brothers or father? Another weird thing is that it showed Nathan had a relative named Nathan Gale. And that Nathan Gale is still alive, but I don't know if the systems are messing up or what, but just overall very bizarre. And the other Nathan Gale is the same age that Nathan Gale would be. Now, we also have Nathan's obituary, and specifically the cards that would be given at his funeral. Nathan Miles Gale, age 25 of Marysville, died Wednesday, December 8th of 2004 in Columbus. He was a dedicated associate with Manpower and was a 1998 graduate of Ohio High Point, where he studied to be an electrician. He formerly served in the United States Marine Corps and was a member of the Marysville Eagles Lodge number 3506. Nathan was always active and athletic and was a former member of the Lima Thunder semi-pro football team, for which he played both offensive and defensive lines. He loved snowboarding and target practice, and he will be remembered as a loving, something ornery brother. Also, just to add, that in Nathan's obituary, it said that he loved target practice, but he had only been doing target practice for about a year at this point. So it's a bit weird to add that in the obituary. Also, considering the fact of what he did. It also said that Nathan was a member of the Marysville Eagles Lodge number 3506. And you're probably wondering what that means. Well, that lodge is the location of a fraternal order of the Eagles area. Their mission statement is, the Fraternal Order of Eagles is an international non-profit organization uniting fraternally in the spirit of liberty, truth, justice, and equality to make human life more desirable by lessening its ills and promoting peace, prosperity, gladness, and hope. This fraternal order apparently helped establish Social Security in the United States and founded Mother's Day. Now, going to the Eagles fraternity, Nathan, in order to join, would have to be sponsored by 2 members that were already a part of the fraternity, and also obey their rules or rituals, which basically stated that Nathan had to be a model citizen and live a useful life. Who exactly sponsored Nathan? Oh, that's not known, but this shows that Nathan was somewhat attempting to be a good person, and he took an oath multiple times in the fraternity and the Marines. Nathan, throughout the year of 2004, would constantly go to concerts and come home all bruised and bloody, his mother said. Nathan also started getting tattoos, and he went snowboarding a lot. In this picture, you can see his snowboarding boots, but who did he go with? Nathan also got 2 cars, 2 jobs, got his license, and went to shoot his gun at the range a ton. It really seemed like he was doing a lot to further himself or his life. He wasn't making the moves that a person who was typically going to do what he did would do. Not only this, but there was also issues at the show that night with Nathan. Earlier, I said there was a security guard at the venue, and his name was Mitch Carpenter. His brother, Daniel Sheets, was also supposedly there, and they were together at points. Now, both of them had come into contact with Nathan at separate points, but their stories are a bit bizarre. Mitch basically stated that he saw Nathan park his car and block the side door of the bar, so he told Nathan to move his car. Nathan then parked again by the front of the club, and he was asked again to move by Mitch. Mitch and Daniel basically said the same thing, but like in a reverse order, and it was pretty confusing. Apparently, Daniel walked up to Nathan about an hour after moving the car and asked him what he was doing, and Nathan said that he was waiting for the main act. Daniel saw Nathan pacing back and forth and smoking cigarettes. A very interesting thing here is that Daniel said that he had seen Nathan walk into the woods also. Now, apparently, this same night, an unknown, unidentified man was found hiding by train tracks that were right through the woods next to the club. That guy was let go, and police said he was there out of curiosity. Plus, a weird thing is that a witness claimed they saw Nathan outside of the club at about 8:30 p.m. So that would have put him there a bit earlier than previously stated. And another witness actually saw the guy who was hiding by the train tracks. Daniel, the security officer, saw Nathan go into the woods towards these tracks, and that really does make you question, who was this guy and why was he let go? Why did Nathan go in the woods towards him, and what happened there? The last very bizarre part, to which I'm not going to cover super in depth, is about how when Nathan hopped over the fence, apparently the security guard, Mitch, tried to stop him, but Nathan just said, "What's up?" and walked past him. It makes you wonder, why did Mitch not try and stop him? Mitch said that he walked after him and whatnot, but he didn't try to stop him. Also, after this happened, apparently Nathan had walked up to the Damageplan trailer and banged on the door and tried to get inside. And then after that, he walked up to a group of roadies and told them that, and also that Damageplan knows him by name and wouldn't want him there, and the roadies told Nathan to fuck off. That was supposedly at 8:15 p.m., just moments before all of this occurred. Not only this, but there was a weird thing involving a microphone stand that was on the stage that was moved just moments before Nathan attacked. The microphone stand was literally right next to Dime for some reason, and supposedly when Nathan ran into the building, security ran after him, but Nathan was very easily able to get onto the stage. A statement was made to police that said while a roadie was moving the microphone on stage, Nathan ran onto the stage and saw him, but he ran back off. How would he have been able to do that with all of the security that was apparently trailing him? I'm not one to be all about conspiracies and things like that, but after reading all of this and looking into it very, very heavily, there is a lot of discrepancies and things that just don't really make any sense. For example, who was Nathan hanging out with? His mother claimed he had no friends, but he had to have some. He was snowboarding and a part of the fraternity, which he needed recommendations for, and a few other things. Throughout the 600+ page police report, all of the things I just mentioned are in there. Not only this, but there's other bizarre things. And throughout that entire report, Nathan having paranoid schizophrenia is not mentioned. Nathan's father and brothers are not mentioned. And overall, Nathan didn't appear to be a huge fan of Pantera or Damageplan. And I'm not saying that Nathan didn't commit this terrible atrocity. He definitely did. But I am saying that things are weird about this case, and I can't exactly explain to you why. Also, inside of Nathan's house, nothing was broken. And he said because of the demons and the voices that he would constantly break things. There was nothing broken. But here's what I do know. That 4 innocent men were murdered in cold blood on that December night. And they'll all be remembered in some way, shape, or form. I also just want to give a shout out to the cop that killed Nathan in such a heated and stressful situation. His name was James Nigmayer. James risked his life to run at Nathan, though I did read there were some discrepancies in his story comparing it to what actually occurred. But James was just in a very high intense situation, and I'm sure that memory and things of that nature are hard to actually keep track of. James suffers from severe PTSD because of this situation. James saved the band tech John and potentially a bunch of other people. Officer James is a hero, and like I said, he suffers from severe PTSD because of what happened and actually retired as a police officer not long after. He tries to forget about the situation, but still keeps in contact with some people, and now he works for the city of Columbus and their Fleet Services Department. In 2005, he won NRA Law Enforcement Officer of the Year, and Officer James is one person to remember. The last part that I am going to mention in this story is about Phil Anselmo and what he had to say after Dime was killed. I know that they had an awful falling out, and Vinny absolutely hated Phil afterwards, and I believe blamed him for Dime's death. This is what Phil said.
People want my reaction to what happened. This is not about me. This is about Dimebag Darrell. Purely Darrell. It's not about me or some motherfucking psycho that happened to destroy the most beautiful person. One of my best friends in the world. It was the heavy metal goddamn media that destroyed Pantera. This is about Darrell, my brother of 17 years, Pantera's music changed people's lives, man. We weren't just some band. He was not just some guitar player. I want to say, bless his family and all of his close friends. And I never got a chance to say goodbye in the right way, and it kills me. And I'm so sorry. I wish to God I could have gone to his funeral, but I have to respect his family's wishes. And they do not want me there. I believe I belong there. But I understand completely. I'm so sorry to his band members. I'm so sorry to the whole fucking world that loved Dimebag Darrell. Because let me tell you something. There was not one motherfucker like him. I'm so sorry to his family. And everyone else who was just senselessly killed in Columbus, Ohio. That's a town I love. That's a town I've played up 100 times, god damn it. I love that town. That's where Dimebag Darrell got killed. This is very unique for me. And that's all I know. Just bless his family. Bless his friends. I love him. Like a brother loves a brother. Vinnie Paul, my other brother. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to the cat who was shot twice. I would have taken a bullet for you, brother. Mark my words, because I love you, and I love all of you. What is this world coming to? This has changed the world. I hope you all realize that now. This has changed the entire world. And this is the last you'll be seeing of me for a long time. I hope you're happy. Heavy metal music magazines. Media, I hope you're happy.
That really did feel sincere and heartfelt, and Phil did say some terrible things about Dime and Vinny, but friends sometimes do that, and sometimes you just don't get along. All in all, though, this situation was absolutely terrible, and I want to know your thoughts about it. But anyways, thank you for watching this episode of High Time Crime. If true crime is your thing, then please like and subscribe because it's all we do. I also have an all-exclusive Patreon if you're interested in that. There's a bunch of tiers to choose from, and the third one allows for you to see a Patreon-only video, and that tier and the second one allow you to have your name at the end of each High Time Crime video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, friend.